From every corner of the globe, stories that connect us, voices that inspire. This is Diaspora Television Network, your authentic source for news, views, and entertainment from the diaspora.
Today, we are honored to have Dr. Nelson Aluya with us, a distinguished and results-driven physician leader with over 25 years of experience in healthcare administration, clinical leadership, medical education, and community advocacy. Dr. Aluya has served as the Chief Medical Officer of two major federally qualified health centers in Newark, New Jersey, and has held esteemed positions such as Medical Director of prominent rehabilitation centers and Assistant Professor of Medicine at Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School. Beyond his medical expertise, Dr. Aluya is also a global affairs analyst of international repute, bringing a unique perspective to critical global issues. In this interview, he will share his insights on the race for critical minerals by world powers and its implications for global dynamics. Welcome, Dr. Aluya.
In what ways would you say China has turned its investments in regions like Africa and South America into a formidable geopolitical advantage?
Well, with every economy that becomes, truly big, and if you truly want to be a superpower, then you have to spread or expand beyond your shores. Remember when I said earlier on that China was an empire, was a superpower, but it was more of a regional power rather than a global power. And they learned from Spain, from Britain, from Russia, how to become a global power, a superpower, and then of course from United States. So they're emulating what the US and everybody has done, because every great superpower emulates what the previous superpower does. And then unfortunately, those are the same thing that make them fail. So, but China learned, like, you know what, if we truly want to become a superpower, then we truly have to expand beyond our shores. Expanding beyond their shores meaning what? Looking for resources. Resources in terms of money, in terms of labor, and in terms of raw materials, right? Money, labor, and raw materials. Once you're able to capture those across the world, you truly then become a superpower, because with that comes your political and economic influence, and also your military might and influence. So, because you need those things to drive the military. Like I said earlier on, you control the money, you have the military, you build it up, and then we control the narrative. So, in order to do that, you need to expand outside of your shores. So, China has done that. Remember that their population is huge. So, they need to feed the population. They need to bring the resources that will generate food, energy, power for their population as well. You understand? So in order to do that, they had to look elsewhere, and the influence that they have to determine where those things will come from. So they expanded. Africa was one of them. Europe is one of them, even if they're doing it covertly. And of course, in their local region, which is Southeast Asia, from the Philippines to India and all the other things, they tried to do that. And then, of course, Southern America, they've done that. And they've done that by pushing economic narratives. They know what you need and how you need it, which is money. Because most of these other countries, their population is expanding, technology is expanding, and they need money to build the infrastructures that they have. China has the money, so how best to control somebody to give them money? So once you give them money, you have to build, and then they have the population and say, you know what, we'll come help you build. We'll build here for you. We'll bring our people to come help you build, but at the same time, you owe us. Now, if you don't owe us, if you owe us what we built for you, we need you to pay. If you can't pay, then we come seize it. But for them to be able to seize that, they need the military might. That they've not been able to coordinate well. Unlike the US or Britain and all that. What is happening in Venezuela today happened in 1902. 1902, when I think they call it the king of the prince of the 80s was the Venezuelan president, Cipriano Castro, um, took over Venezuela after a civil war. Now, what happened is Britain, as the biggest power in the world then, had invested so much in Venezuela. They say Venezuela have to pay up. So Venezuela say they don't have the money. So, and you see what happened in Africa when Tanzania and a few other countries were owed China, and China say you must pay up. And they say we don't have the money. What did they do? They took over their police station, took over a lot of things. So these things do happen. Now, in order for you to truly invest, give people money, and be able to have not just soft power, but also military power, you need the military to back up the money you put on the ground. You understand? But China hasn't been able to coordinate that yet. That's why they're still building and building, their military. So at this point in time, they spread their money all through. Now, one of the other things they also do is the Chinese Beltway, right? They build the Beltway everywhere. Yeah. So road map work, the road beltway, all the way from China to Afghanistan to everywhere to Africa, all the way down to South Africa. They do the same thing. Another beltway in what do you call it? In South America as well, right? Now, in all of this, what they're also doing is building ports, right? They're building ports. One of the biggest ports they're building right now is in Peru, right? That port in Peru will serve 6 South American countries. And of course, you see what happened with the Panama Canal when they have 3 ports. Out of the 3 ports that even the US helped build, today China controls 2 of those ports. And that's why when Trump came, Trump was making a whole abula over the whole thing. And China has spent a whole lot of money investing in Venezuela. So Trump sees the game. He sees what's going on. He understands the narrative. And if you know what they say with the US, when in 1823, President Monroe came up with the Monroe Doctrine that the Western Hemisphere belonged to the United States, period, and nobody. So if you come to my backyard and you want to build anything, no, I will not allow it, right? And that's what led to the same thing with Venezuela in 1902. And you know what happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis when Russia or USSR was the biggest power, was also the biggest power in the world. So now it's no longer USSR, it's China. So all of these things will come to a head where as China expands and spread, they will have to find a way to defend what they spread. But the difference is this: from previous Western superpowers or global superpowers, China, yet for now, is not building military bases. Not. America has over 700 military bases across the world. And you need to maintain those military bases, right? And it costs a lot of money. China is not building. Maybe they are smart and they see what happened to other global powers and see what that costs them. That's why they're not building. But if you cannot build those military bases and secure the money that you give to people, then how truly can you influence them? And if you look around the world, every great superpower have always fought wars. They fight wars. If you go back to what happened to Spain, they fought wars, many wars. The Arabian Wars, Brico Wars, the French, Britain, they fought all of this, right? Russia fought a lot of wars. You see what happened in Afghanistan, the wars they fought in Central Africa and not Southern Africa. So all of those things, and you see today what US is doing, fighting wars all over. China has not fought a war. I think the only war they fought was the war they fought with, I think, was it the Philippines or something? Oh, no, was it? No. Vietnam. They fought one war with Vietnam. It was short-lived, right? And they lose skirmishes here and there with the new emerging superpower, which is India. So all of this, they're able to do, right? But they're smart enough yet not to put military might behind all of those areas. So maybe they'll do a different approach because they see what happened to others. Maybe they do. Or maybe down the road, they'll get so greedy to the point where, you know what, we have to get our money back. Otherwise, we would not, they truly become a superpower. But one of these I give to them is they were able to raise within 40 years 800 million people out of poverty. They used to be the poorest country in the world. By 1978, their GDP was about $150 billion. Today, it's $18 trillion. That's remarkable. And you see what India is doing today, so raising people out of poverty. The poverty capital was India. Today is Nigeria. Hope that somebody somewhere in the space of governance in Nigeria hear what we're saying and say, you know what, we need to raise people out of poverty.
Great. Now let's segue into the response of the U.S. to all of this. Okay.
Right.
Now the U.S. was, if you like, slow to spot vulnerabilities in critical mineral supply chains dominated by China. What would you say prompted the scramble to respond now?
Well, because I'm sorry to say, and hate him or love him, Trump saw this a long time ago. You see how I'm telling you this? Because I've seen this a long time ago. And you see me write articles, you see me write poems, you see me write those things. Because I point out the direction, see what's coming and what we need to do. Trump has been saying this since the 1970s, seriously, and heavily in the 1980s. He saw what's happening and what happened this time around. He knew that the only way to rectify some of all these things is to go on and take power. Period. Now he has the power. Now all the things that he's seen, which I'm sorry to say, and I'm going to emphatically say, were the hallmarks of a declining empire. The U.S. had all of them, and we can talk about them eventually. All the hallmarks of a declining empire, U.S. had all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the seventh one was on social decay. The social decay in the United States, and like they say, great empires don't explode, they implode. America was getting to a point where it was imploding. So America was sitting on its oars, watching what was happening. The decadence within the United States, the corruption, the decadence and all that took place. I mean, look at failing institutions. The America's financial institution failed to the point where the government had to bail them out under Barack Obama. Remember that?
I do.
Big billions or hundreds of billions of dollars were given to bail financial institutions that failed.
I mean,
The hallmark, big hallmark of the fall of great civilization, of great empires. Now, thank God. But Trump now seeing and say, you know what? First and foremost is America first. What is he doing? He's pulling away all the military bases. If you see in his first time, what did he do? He closed the place, the war that he had in Afghanistan. Straight out. Be like, no, we got to bring that because it was costing this country trillions and billions of dollars every day. How much did America spend on Afghanistan within that space? Up to 20, and it was costing them too much. And that's why he was right. He withdrew from the border between Turkey and the Kazakhstan and the Kurdish. Remember? He withdrew and people were screaming. He withdrew all of these things. So, because he understands that war is expensive and war can be a source of business for some people where corrupt practices can go unabated because you cannot account for the corrupt practices that take place during war. We see what's happening in Nigeria. Why the Islamic extremism and all the things had not been able to take place, or they could not contain it all along, because again, the war there is the business and people were profiting from it. So America is responding now and seeing that, look, right in my backyard, what happened to the Monroe Doctrine, right? And the added policy that Roosevelt, FDR, put in place in 1902 to supplement the Monroe Doctrine that made America become a superpower and diminish Britain, was happening. And they said, not in our backyard, we see what China is doing, we see what everybody else is doing. So And he has been screaming and yelling about China since the 1980s. So he's here. Of course, he see what's happening. And now that's the reason why he's defending what he thinks he needs to defend to truly. That's America first.
It's getting more and more interesting. Um, Again, I say we'll still go to those 7 signs of a falling empire, but let's still look at a couple of things. Can you explain the US's two-pronged strategy of onshoring using grants, loans, and offtake agreements, despite challenges like the 29-year permitting delays and friendshoring with allies?
Right. So one of the beauty of the United States is that over time, it's been able to have people as leaders who are empathic, who are trustic, and people who are also intellectually sound and of good mind, and also who have the interest of humanity at heart. You understand? I mean, take it from FDR and all the other people, even Truman, and all the things that they did, down to JFK and to the gracious and beautiful soul in the one who lived up to 100 years. Um, oh my God, what's his name? I'm having the the one who came up before, he was dead before Reagan. Oh my God.
Okay, before Reagan, Carter?
Yeah, Jimmy Carter, the beautiful soul of Jimmy Carter. You understand? So these are the kind of human beings that America has had. So in all of this great and might and power, also thought about humanity and giving back. So that's the beauty that they have had. And God bless this nation for that. Now, the soft power that you talk about, grants and everything else, was an act of Congress. I think it was put in place by John F. Kennedy in the 1960s, 1963, where the act of government put in the U.S. aid. Right, the U.S. aid was truly to reach out to the world to give back for the might and the grace and the graciousness of America. In as much as they know they've taken, they also know that to whom much is giving and how much is expected. So they decide to give back. And they did that. 30 billion to 40 to $44 billion was what the US aid had control over. And it was an act of Congress. So that money was put in giving grants on research, help poverty alleviation, fight disease, and all that. So, but it was also a strategic advantage for the US to help prevent the influx of diseases, new diseases, and emerging diseases as well, coming to the US. And also a means of tapping into talents and skills and knowledge from across the world because they know that their population is dwindling. They know they need the skills and talents. So, in order to bring those people into the US, they needed to be able to formulate a structure that would allow those individuals to come. And one of the things they did, in as much as President Ronald Reagan, the same fight on immigration that Trump is fighting now. Guess what? Reagan did the same thing. I remember when a lot of Nigerians were deported back home back in the days. They said, you know what? With all of these things we've done, we want the best of the best around the world, right, to come so that they can help us produce and also help improve the population. But you see what they did in, I think, 1990s to 2000, and they still do it. Was
Diversity lottery.
visa. Remember they get the immigrant visa, right?
Yeah, see?
Yeah, the
Varsity lottery.
diversity lottery. Yes. But when they did that, it was a strategic move. They knew what's up. So that everybody wanted to come to America. They all wanted to come. It was the shining star on the hill, right? So everybody wanted to come. So in as much as they were coming, they could select and scroll down and filter down to the best of best who came to the US. Doctors, engineers, all of those things, they came. And they give you the avenue to express yourself, to become America. The country was free. You understand? So all of those people came and they contributed immensely to this country with their talents. And remember, these were people who were trained in their own countries by their country's dollars or resources. And they were rooted up and came to America with all of those skills and talents to contribute to America's economy. You understand? So it was all strategic. So all of these things that you said with, the soft power, and of course, guess what? The movies, the music. I mean, from Michael Jackson to James Brown, to Kanye West, to what's his name? PVD, bless his soul, with all the stuff, and to
Who did it? Still alive?
Rihanna, and to Jay-Z, who's now, they all become billionaires. These are some of these that are soft powers and the music industry. I mean, look at the Oscars. Everybody you have to be and to win the Oscar. And then knowledge, the skills. The greatest universities, they redefine certain schools and call them Ivy Leagues. So if you want to be among the best, you have to come to Ivy Leagues. So everywhere around the world, everybody coming. Somebody gave me the statistics the other day that I think 900,000 people moved from China to come to the United States to come study. But only about 7,000 to 8,000 people leave the United States to go to China to study. You understand? You see the dichotomy. So China, the US, all of its military power and economic power also has the soft power of knowledge, skills, and everything else. So this is changing, but we're yet to see some of the things that will expel intellectuals out of this country. Americans still love their country. They still want to be here. They still feel as powerful, and they still feel they can thrive here, as well as other people still want to come.
Okay, so this brings me to another very important question. How would you describe the role that projects like the Lobito Corridor in Africa play in building a global ecosystem of trusted producers to counter China's influence?
Well, again, it's all about technology and the future and emerging technology. The Lobito Corridor, Lobito Corridor was not just created for the fun of it, because they think, Africans need railway, or they need, pathways so that they can communicate to one another and all that. No, they were doing it strategically for their own purpose. But the advantage is, if Africans and the African leaders are smart enough, they'll take advantage of it. Whatever was created, they can begin to build territories or tributaries from it across African continent that would help the the African free trade zone agreement, rights, so that it can increase production, industrialization within the African continent. But the essence of that is to counter the China Beltway, right? That they're producing. The Chinese thing.
AGOA also was to serve.
That AGOA, yeah, that's been around for a long time. But the AGOA is not effective if Africans cannot produce. It's not just about raw materials. If Africans cannot produce, it's not truly effective. It's been a lopsided something. But guess what? America need to understand that in the next future, if they truly want to retain their significance and truly compete and supersede what China is aiming to do, they need to strategically partner with Africans. Period. There's no other way around it. They have to. Now, for a number of reasons. And that's why when President Biden was about to leave, I remember I wrote an article about that. I think one of the last, maybe a week before he left office, international trip he made was to Angola. And I wrote, if you look up that, I wrote, why was he going to Angola? Of all places, it didn't go to South Africa, which is one of the most industrialized, nations in the continent. He didn't go to Nigeria, which is the biggest economy and the most populous country in Africa. He did. He didn't go to Egypt, which has a strategic alliance and relationship with them. No, he didn't. Not to Kenya. He went to Angola.
Yeah.
Because of to cement that agreement, to create this urge and the control for what? For rare minerals. So that corridor is created and they're able to mine and carry everything so that they can truly be able to have access to that and compete with what China is trying to build. But this is what I've always said, and I'll say it here wholeheartedly. My brother, and all those who are listening to me, if Africans don't wake up and get to a point where they have knowledgeable leaders, and I'll say it again, if Africans and their people don't wake up to the point where they can create and develop a platform for knowledgeable leaders to control countries in Africa, they were doomed. Why? Because the time will come again where what happened with the Berlin Conference in 1884 and 1885 will happen again. Because I'll tell you this, the superpowers, they will not fight themselves over the resources that Africa has to give. They won't. They never did before. They will not do it again. What they're going to do and say, you know what? Trump is here now. He's doing what he's doing. But somebody may come in who do not have the forcefulness and the US or America alone agenda. Will now say, you know what? All right, let's negotiate. And what they're going to do, they will sit down and divide Africa all over again. Tell you how they're going to divide Africa. And I'll tell you this. The West will belong to the dwindling powers in Europe because they're not longer as big, as powerful they are. You see how they relied on the US for everything. But the West, they will now say, you know what? We'll give you West Africa because you already have footprints there, right? You have Britain in West Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, France in all those French, they'll give you West Africa.
Use this really anymore. Folks.
North Africa, Northeast Africa to Eastern Africa, they'll say, you know what, China, you take that. And Russia, you guys will share that. Right? And guess what's going to happen to Southern Africa? Central and South Africa. The United States will take it. Because they already, right now, through the Lobita corridor, they're putting their imprint there. Why the heck do you think they're putting their imprint there? You think it's for fun? No. It's for strategic negotiation down the road. As a people, as Africans must wake up so that what happened in 1884, 1885, the Bari Conference, there will not be another conference in Helsinki on our behalf. God forbid that. Because you and I are alive, nothing will happen.
Hopefully that's not going to happen again. I mean, I always saw the diversity visa. I saw the diversity visa as, oh, yeah. Say?
I said, he who fails to prepare should prepare to fail.
No, I agree. I mean, talking about dividing Africa once again, I saw the diversity visa as a very neat slavery 2.0, taking our very best. Well, that's by the way. Let's look at Africa and this its response as well. Now, Africa holds vast reserves of cobalt in the DRC, for instance, platinum in South Africa, and more. How can the continent shift from being, raw oil exporter to strategic partner of the value chain?
Right. First, I said it. The biggest problem we have in Africa is about leadership, period. It's about leadership. That's the first thing. If you look at the history of Africa before colonial era, those who ruled Africa based on their own agenda, right? Resource control, right? Labor and capital. Period. Like I alluded before, resource control, labor and capital. Money controls everything. So they control the money and they control the labor that mine the resources. And where did the resources end? Abroad, right? So what did they do? They replaced, when they left and they gave you all independence in 1960. But the beautiful thing is this, and I will talk about some of the things that happened that would truly make Africa inevitable, that the world must pay attention. I talked about the population and everything else, right? Now, we could continue to be truly in numbers, control the narrative in numbers. Now, in the resources, those who control the ability to mine those resources, refine them and utilize them for good are the ones who truly will become, powerful or great. But like I said earlier on, just like the Arabs did, they cannot mine, they don't control, they don't refine, even they build it, but they're able to negotiate the capacity to own the resources that comes out of it. That's the ability to do that. Somebody, the first president, I think was in Botswana, did that. And that's why today Botswana is able to control most of the resources that comes off the earth. Beautiful. We can learn from that gentleman. I've forgotten his name now. Africa can do that. So when it comes to how we need to do it, one is leadership. We must have knowledgeable leaders.
Yeah.
And these knowledgeable leaders, just like Deng Xiaoping did for China in 1978, right? Where he changed the trajectory of China to what it is. This individual, one person, we had them before in the 1960s. Now you see what happened to the entire African continent. Like I said, something happened to the entire black race in the 1960s. Entire black race. 1960 was independence. Here in the Africa, in America, it was civil rights. In the Caribbean, it was also independence across board. That's what the political freedom gave to them. What we need now is economic liberation, and that comes with leadership. So that's what. That leadership will create changing the narrative, changing the trajectory, where there'll be a coalition, a cohesive, coordinated, intentional purpose for an African agenda. That agenda is there. And that's the agenda, 2063. How many people know about that? The agenda 2063. How many people will use? And they will begin to bring that agenda in the forefront. It will. And eventually. And that's where the template for leadership comes about. You understand? Now you see the African free trade agreement, right? Yes. That's where. So that's where leadership will begin to take place. Where Africans will begin to trade among themselves. Because until we begin to trade amongst ourselves, we'll truly not be relevant. Why? Because today, what's our global trade across the globe? Only 3%. We contribute to 3% of global trade. And for you to be truly relevant in global trade, you have to contribute 5% and above. We're doing 3%. Oh, nowhere. And guess what? For us to be truly significant, have a trade amongst us, you have to have 25 and above. What's the percentage that Africans are trading among themselves? 15%. So we're not there yet. So that's where the African Free Trade Agreement would truly help us. So if China, the US are building structures that would help move our minerals out of Africa, what we need to do to take advantage of that. So we begin to build our own tributaries out of those. So we learn to trade within ourselves, remove the bureaucratic bottleneck. We remove, digitalize our trade system amongst us, right? So that the currency for me to trade, for instance, thank God with technology. If I want to send money to somewhere in Nigeria, now I can send the money, it appears to them in Naira, and they collect the equivalent. So if I want to buy something from Ghana, I can trade with my Naira and give the Ghanaians an equivalent of in CV, right? And that's how it is. So you take away the bureaucratic bottleneck. You remove focus of centers of corruption. And how do you do that? You digitalize it, you upscale it, and with innovation you can. We have the deals. We have the brilliance to do that. You see what the Kenyans are doing in fintech. We have Nigerians who are doing that, Paystar, and all these other things. They're doing that. So we're slowly, surely moving towards all the characters or all the indices for that growth is shown. It's going to take place, but it's still underground. But guess what? Once we have that kind of leadership, it'll begin to emanate. It'll come to the forefront. That kind of leadership will begin to see again. First, you see in the Sahel, right? With Tuareg and all these people. Maybe I hope that they are the beginning of the forerunners for the kind of leadership that Africans need, that will now change the narrative and the style of governance within the African continent. Because when the white man left, or the West, they left us with their own structures, which was designed to usurp our resources out of the continent. So those who they put in place were playing out they were playing out the card that was decked to them, right? You see them sit in office, steal money. Where did they take it to? They take it abroad, because that's what the masters put on the ground. So when knowledgeable leaders come in place that understand the narrative and say, you know what, we need to do this. Because guess what? It's a shame. Understanding and racism and everything else. And not just that, but within us, Africa itself, where culturally we suppress our women. I mean, our women in Africa is at 50% of us, just as it is in a global space. They are brilliant, they're intelligent, and they have a lot to contribute. Just like it's a shame that the rest of the world can degrade Africa and the black continent to the point where we were subhumans. It's a travesty to humanity.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what blacks and how forward we would have gone if they allowed black people to evolve? See what we've done here in the United States. All the technologies that our black diasporas have put in. So I tell the world, and I say it often enough, that no nation on earth or no empire will truly be great until they accept the black diaspora and give them capacity to excel and express themselves. No nation would excel and truly become great. Because what black diasporas do, they come up with the energy. We do have the strength, the intellectual acumen, and ability to do great things. Not just that, we also come with the cultural flair and the finesse that is unsurpassed by everybody on earth, by any cultural or any race. So that combination is what has made America truly great. It gives it the military might and the power. It also gives it the soft power as well. So Africa is this, Africa is the future, and that's how we true. So we must begin to, one, have knowledgeable leaders. We must trade amongst ourselves, get to beyond the 25, 40%. In the Americas, they trade about 45% and above. In Europe, they trade about 65% within European trade. In Asia, they trade about 35 and above. So Africa is 15. But there's a reason for that. We're emerging still, 60 years from independence from most of us. So we're still struggling to find our feet. We will. And the rest of the world need to pay attention.